"I just used your card for snacks," my sister's daughter said. By morning, $6,300 was gone. My mom brushed it off. Kids will be kids. I stayed silent. That night, I quietly froze every card connected to their accounts. At 6 a.m., my sister opened her banking app and screamed. 10 minutes later, my phone rang. I stared at the screen, barely keeping my emotions in check. $6,300, nearly all the money I had left, was gone, wasted on meaningless purchases. I didn't cry or yell. I just sat there, staring at my laptop, feeling like I couldn't breathe. That money was supposed to last the month. I was already supporting 5 people on one income: myself, my daughter, and my sister's family. Scrolling through the charges felt surreal. Louis Vuitton, Zara designer sneakers that cost more than my old rent, luxury skincare, high-end hair tools, even a wellness retreat deposit that made me laugh, not because it was funny, but because it was absurd. My 18-year-old niece, unemployed and with no income, had gone on a luxury shopping spree using my saved card details. It wasn't an accident. I knew that from what she'd said earlier that night. I'd come home after a long day of meetings, tired and hungry. She was curled on the couch, scrolling through her phone. When I asked how her day was, she casually mentioned she'd used my card for snacks and a few other things, since it was saved in Amazon. I froze. "What do you mean?" I asked. She shrugged like it was nothing. "I just used your card for snacks," she said, as if it were normal. I didn't argue. I went straight to my room and checked my account. The moment I saw the balance, it felt like a punch to the chest. That card was for emergencies. But lately, every week had become one. Groceries, school supplies, gas for their car. Small things that added up. But this wasn't small anymore. This was theft. They had lived with me for 6 months, though it was supposed to be 2 weeks. My sister said they just needed time after her husband lost his job. I believed them. I let them move in, fed them, paid their bills, and even let my daughter give up her room so their daughter could have her own. Every week came with new excuses for why they couldn't contribute. And every week, I told myself it was temporary. It wasn't. It was comfort for them. Around midnight, I knocked on their door. My sister answered, half asleep and annoyed. I told her what happened, that her daughter had spent over $6,000. She blinked, unbothered, then said, "Kids will be kids." Something inside me went silent. I walked away, shut my door, and began freezing every single card, sub-account and login they had access to. I even contacted stores to cancel pending purchases. Some had already shipped, but I knew I still had time to return them. By 6 a.m., I was drinking coffee when I heard a scream from the guest room. Minutes later, her husband called, furious, demanding to know why their cards weren't working, why their orders failed, why everything was locked. I listened quietly, then hung up. No guilt, no apology, just clarity. This wasn't an accident. It was the result of letting people think my boundaries didn't matter. By sunrise, the house was chaos. My sister stormed through the hallway, slamming cabinets, crying out, "How could Abigail do this to us?" Her husband was on the porch, vaping and ranting to someone on the phone about how I had humiliated his family. Meanwhile, my niece sat on the couch, clutching her phone, crying as refunds rolled in. I sat at the table, calmly drinking my coffee, letting them face the silence. I wanted them to feel it, the weight of what they had done. By noon, my sister finally spoke. She said we needed to have a grown-up conversation. I agreed, hoping for accountability. We sat in the living room, me on one side, them on the other. She started by saying my reaction was a bit extreme. Then came the excuses that I embarrassed them, that I caused instability, that I should have talked to them first. Her husband added that I made them feel unwelcome and helpless, claiming I set damaged the trust between us. My niece said she set been under stress, that shopping gave her control, and that she needed stability for her growth. I listened in disbelief. They weren't ashamed. They were angry at me. I explained calmly that I had less than $300 left, overdue bills, and had sacrificed every comfort so they wouldn't be homeless. My daughter gave up her space and peace for people who couldn't even say thank you. I told them I didn't want the money back, not because I forgave them, but because I was done. Done expecting accountability from people who treated kindness as weakness. My sister cried. Her husband said nothing. My niece walked away. The next morning, I left early, drove aimlessly, and sat in a grocery store parking lot with a gas station coffee, just needing to breathe. When I returned, there was an envelope on the counter. "We said are sorry. We said'll fix it." No money, no plan, just 7 empty words. That's when I knew they weren't going to fix anything, because in their minds, nothing was broken. The envelope sat untouched on the counter for 2 full days before I read it again. "We said you're sorry. We said you're fix it." No explanation, no offer to make things right. Just a vague promise written in haste. For the next week, they acted polite. Quiet mornings, dishes done, shoes off at the door. But it felt forced, like they were waiting for my anger to fade. They'd weathered storms before. They assumed this was just another one. But this time was different. I was watching them closely. My niece still slept late, scrolling endlessly on her phone. Somehow still shopping online, with money I didn't know she had. She didn't look for work. One afternoon, she even asked if I'd help her rebuild her Amazon cart, since everything got refunded. I walked away before I said something I'd regret. My sister tried to look productive, claimed she'd applied for jobs, but couldn't remember where. She talked about remote opportunities, yet spent most of her time re-watching old shows. Her husband hid in the garage, job hunting while vaping and watching videos. It felt surreal, like I was living in a house where only I could see the damage. So, one night after work, I sat at the dining table and made a plan. I printed out job listings, entry-level roles, simple opportunities to help them restart. I even mapped out bus routes for the ones they could reach without using my car. The next morning, I called a family meeting. I told them I wasn't there to punish anyone, just that I couldn't keep supporting 5 people alone. I presented the job listings, explained how this was a chance to move forward together. My sister nodded, expression blank. Her husband leaned back and said, "It's not that simple." When I asked what he meant, he didn't answer. Then my niece picked up the job listings, glanced at them, and dropped them in the trash. "I set not working at some fast food place," she said. "I set not desperate." I looked at her, then at my sister. Nothing, no correction, no apology, no accountability, just silence. That night, lying in bed, I realized something painful. The version of myself that kept giving, sacrificing, and stretching to hold everyone else up. She had to disappear. They weren't just taking money anymore. They were draining pieces of me. By morning, I knew what I had to do. I called into work and took a personal day. Then I started gathering receipts. The return windows were closing, and I wasn't letting that money vanish. Most of my niece's luxury purchases were still unopened, boxes stacked like trophies. She didn't notice as I loaded them into my car. I overheard her laughing in the backyard with a friend, saying she's still mad about the card thing, like it was some inside joke. I drove across the city, returning everything I could. The luxury handbag was first. Refund processed. $1,199 back in my account. Then Sephora, Nike, a boutique. 5 hours of driving later, I'd recovered nearly $4,500. When I got home, exhausted but lighter, my niece stormed into the kitchen. She demanded to know where her things were. I told her simply, I returned them. They were never yours. She exploded, screaming, calling me jealous, a thief, saying I'd ruined her life. Then she threw a coffee mug at the wall. The crash echoed through the house. My daughter came running, terrified. My sister followed seconds later. My niece pointed at me, shouting that I'd stolen from her and that she'd call the police. I looked her straight in the eye and said, "Go ahead." That shut her down instantly. Then I turned to my sister and said what I'd been holding back for months. I told her that her daughter had become unrecognizable, that I had done everything, fed them, housed them, covered their bills, and all I got in return was manipulation and disrespect. I told her that if she couldn't parent her child, she had failed both as a mother and as my sister. Her husband stood silent in the doorway. I wasn't finished. They had 14 days to leave my house. No more warnings. No more second chances. I told them I'd help with resources, but I wasn't going to carry them anymore. My sister cried, saying it wasn't fair. So I gave her one final option. I'd spoken to a family friend who ran a restaurant. They had 3 positions open: dishwasher, host, and server, and he'd agreed to hire all 3 if they showed up Monday morning. My niece laughed in disbelief. My sister looked horrified. They thought I was bluffing. I wasn't. None of them said a word that night. The next morning, my brother-in-law, who had yelled at me a week earlier, walked into the kitchen and asked what time his shift started. He didn't thank me, but at least he was finally moving. Monday came. For the first time in months, the house was silent at 7 a.m., no phones, no chatter, no noise. I heard the door close and saw my brother-in-law drive away. An hour later, my sister entered the kitchen. She poured herself coffee and quietly said she might give the job a try. I just nodded. By noon, my niece emerged, wordless, waiting for her food to heat up. Then she asked if the rest of her orders were being returned too. I said yes. Sunglasses, a serum, a Bluetooth speaker, anything within the refund window was going back. She muttered that it was humiliating. I agreed. We went to the mall together, not to bond, but because she needed to show ID for the returns. I watched her face as the cashier asked, "Do you have the original payment method?" And she had to reply, "It was my Aunt Sep's card." One by one, the items disappeared. Refunds processed. By the end, I'd recovered almost $6,000. In the car, she crossed her arms, glaring. She said I didn't understand what it felt like to have nothing. That shopping made her feel in control. I didn't argue. I just asked if she thought I'd gotten here by shopping my stress away. She stayed silent, staring out the window. That night, I shut my door and for the first time in months, let myself feel everything: exhaustion, disappointment, but also relief. I tried. I gave them food, shelter, countless chances. I offered them jobs, returned the stolen money, and stayed calm when I wanted to scream. And still, it wasn't set enough. That evening, my brother-in-law came home from his first shift and went straight to bed. My sister followed soon after, mumbling that she didn't think she could handle the pressure. My niece complained that the restaurant wasn't her vibe and that she'd look for something more aligned with her personality. That was when I made my final decision. I typed a short letter, a 10-day notice. It stated that the spare key would be deactivated and that I'd arrange temporary storage if they needed help moving their things. After that, they were on their own. I left the letter on the kitchen table. In the morning, it was still there, untouched. No one spoke to me. No one tried to reason. 10 days passed. On the morning of the deadline, I woke up early, expecting confrontation or guilt. Instead, the house was silent. The guest room was empty. Their things were gone. The only evidence they'd ever lived there was a half-eaten cereal box on the counter and a pair of cheap flip-flops by the door. They left without saying goodbye. I didn't call. I didn't text. I didn't ask where they went. I had done more than enough. For 6 months, I lived their struggle like it was my own. I gave my time, my peace and my savings, trying to keep them afloat, while they acted like I owed them everything. I kept believing that if I gave more, they'd change. But I was wrong. People don't change because you make life easier for them. They change when they decide to. And they never did. The next few days were the quietest my home had been in half a year. My daughter helped me clean out the guest room. We turned it back into her old music room. She didn't say much, just smiled when I told her it was hers again. When I checked my bank account, I saw just over $6,100. Not everything, but close. Enough to start over. Enough to breathe again. 5 days later, my sister called. I let it go to voicemail. Her message was long. She said they were staying with an old friend for now. Her husband was trying to keep the job, and my niece was reevaluating her goals. She ended with, "We know we messed up, but I hope you one set shut us out forever." I didn't respond, because I am shutting them out. Not out of spite, and not for revenge, but because I finally learned what I should have understood long ago. I can't live my life as a safety net for people who refuse to climb. From now on, my time goes to those who respect it. To my daughter, my home, and myself. No more rescuing people who sink every lifeboat I send. No more holding space for adults who treat kindness like a credit line. I was good. I was generous. I was the glue. And it broke me. That one set happened again.